Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, know nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in the replay. This is the vault, episode 635. Public people versus private people. Really excited to do this episode. Really thankful. Really appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in the replay. This episode is definitely something we have, prepared for and wanted to give as good of a go in, as they say, or really just kind of have a great conversation about it. So it's not financial advice or legal advice, but it is a conversation piece that we're having with trustees nowadays because trustees sometimes walk into trustee training with public mindsets. Some of them, a good majority of them. And so, in turn, because the majority is that, even in some cases, our target, the private ones, they're going to get value out of understanding the differentiation of why they're already in the right mindset and how they're going to be able to be more successful in these environments. Whereas in the public environment, it's a little different. Regulations are different. Whereas in the private, you see the regulations for sure are different. They're not as changeable as the public. They are amendable, but a lot of them are in private traditionally based off precedent. So a lot of trustees will come to the vote and they'll say, "Oh, what makes this common law?" Well, if it's based off precedent, we encourage the trustees that get in trustee training to get a Black's Law dictionary. That is a legal dictionary. That is the dictionary that the lawyers are speaking in the courtroom and the judges are speaking in the courtroom, whether you want to call them prosecutors, attorneys, whatever. It's the language of law, ladies and gentlemen, which is the language of business. So there's an advantage. Private people actually are very aware of that. They understand that business is based on law because there's a business law. They know that there's a law that's governing business people because in case they don't want to get sued, they know that they have the ability to sue others. So that's what you kind of engage in and you kind of see from a private person perspective is that they know that they can sue someone in the public. People in the public have their name on things. People in the public have they obviously they have assets in their name, so that what makes it public. Whereas private people understand that they got to trust Christian, know nothing, control everything. So based off of just that information, if you want to reach out, get a consultation, Christian at trustchristian.com. It's Christian at trustchristian.com. Once again, it's Christian at trustchristian.com. Look forward to hearing from you via email. People reach out to us all the time. We have consultations daily. Been pretty packed year here and wrapping it up and still just going into the end of the year. That's why we're doing these episodes based off of the conversations that we're having in the private right now with a lot of families, and they need a lot of distinguishment. They need a distinguishment between public people versus private people. When you start seeing families are saying, "Hey, look, I'm trying to come together with my family, trust Christian involved in this," a rather challenging task here. A challenging task to sit down with your family members, a challenging task for somebody to take leadership and have the family get organized. Private people are organized. Public people are not organized. And if they're in the public, these are private people operating in the public because they're looking to acquire assets. So we're going to address, why do private people go into the public? They go into the public to acquire assets. That's where assets have been. People say, "Oh, something's been stolen." Okay, we know it's been stolen. Point being is it's in the public now. It's up for you as a private family or individual to go in there and grab the public assets and pull them into the private. But do we hear families saying that traditionally or majority? No. We get people coming over talking about, "Oh yeah, trust Christian vote. I'm just gonna be private." How you gonna be private? You don't know how to operate in the public as well. You gotta be able to operate in both of the environments. Why? Because if you're going to be private, if you really want to be private, you're gonna operate in the public to degrees because you're acquiring assets that have been up for grabs, that are up for abandonment. And not only that, most people are in the public. So maybe your customers in the public. So they set up regulations for certain industries, whether it's trading, whether it's transportation, whether it's food administration, whether it's all these different things. They got these different licensing and registrations in the public. And the private people say, "Oh, where do I register the private trust document?" Where are you going to register it? It's private. What do you mean, where are you going to register it? There is no where you register it at. It's not a registry in the public for private entities. Because once you go into public, it's public. And it's challenging to really get a feel for that with some people. But at the end of the day, once you're private, you get an idea that, hey, what is public and private? You always ask yourself that question when you get to those moments. Um, Private people definitely have taken on the trust Christian, own nothing, control everything thought process. They've taken that on. They're in the private. Once again, private people, they are traditionally entrepreneurs, investors. They're not employees traditionally. If they are, if they were well paid employees at a high paid company, they came out with over half $1 million in some type of like severance pay possibly, or $1 million in severance pay. Even if they were in multi millions, these are people that have exited businesses. These are people that have what you call a net worth, where people say, oh, they have the money. Yeah. And it's also liquid, partially. It may be tied up in a house, that costs quite a bit of money, millions of dollars. It may be tied up in some assets. But if they can get liquid relatively quickly within a matter of 3 to 4 days, once again, private people, they have liquid capital. So when we talk about, oh, I got a Bitcoin, but if the internet go down at the house, honey, we don't have access to it anymore. We're not saying that it's that decrepit, It's just one of those things where if you don't have the internet, what value is it? Oh no, but it's so valuable. Like, sure, it sounds like the dollar bill, something based off the faith of the people, and that's the same exact thing. So if you want to keep putting your faith in other things, might as well just have the faith in the most important thing, yourself. And it doesn't matter what currency we use. So when these new currencies pop up, we can look at them with an eye of discernment like, whoa, you're trying to challenge the robust dollar. You're trying to challenge the dollar that's allowed people leverage and liquidity for a bunch of years now. That's allowed people to get wealthy, allow people to enjoy certain qualities of life. That dollar, you're going to let these sub currencies come in and try to manipulate your dominancy. Oh, trust Christian vote. If you live in America, what do you mean you don't have a dominant currency? You have the world's dominant currency. If you would like to move to a place where your currency is not first, have at it. Are you gonna go now and go? You're not even gonna get good. Think about it. Americans that are buying Bitcoin, they're not buying the second best currency in the world. They're trying to get astronomical returns off of something that they think is a pipe dream to change to take over the dollar. It's a pipe dream. Oh no, these are alternatives. They're altcoins. Do you hear these different terms? They might as well said, "Oh, we got it ain't even a real dollar." Remember, this is how we know at the vault that we are in the rooms with the right people. Ladies and gentlemen, did you all see pennies, quarters, dimes, and nickels disappear yet? And when you see those things disappear, that's when we maybe can have a conversation. But right now, they're still playing around with these behind the point decimals numbers. And when we say they, we're saying it from the perspective of the currency hasn't been well, there's going to be a term for it, and it is a revaluation to the currency. There's other countries that have done it. It's okay, ladies and gentlemen, that you're in a dominant country, and sometimes people in dominant countries can get a little complacent. The public people get complacent. That's why they call it the status quo. They're comfortable in America. People are comfortable working jobs for 30 years. People are comfortable having $10,000 worth of debt, $30,000 worth of debt, student loans. People are okay with that. People are comfortable with saying, oh, in the public, well, think about this. If you didn't have Social Security anymore, you probably think a little bit differently about retirement and your investments moving forward. If you knew it was like, oh, tomorrow we're taking it away. They took it away now, so we don't have it anymore. Well, what's next? What else do you have in your portfolio? Oh, I got a Bitcoin. Some people might have that. We're not promoting it or anything of that nature. People just use these different terms that they tell us. Okay. Some people, we know we got trustees. They're diversified into real estate. Now, we're not a fan of real estate, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and tell you guys that at the vault. So it's not a biased or unbiased position. It's just a position of to speak towards real estate. We have trustees that are in real estate. They're going to hear this. They're going to say, oh, Trust Christian, you finally get to share the truth. Okay. We have trustees that live in areas that when that storm came through, these storms came through. We actually have multiple trustees in multiple states. Some in the Carolinas, some in Florida. Literally, some of them said, "Oh yeah, Trust Christian, my property got messed up. We've been dealing with that." Some of them didn't. So the liability is not just, oh, we got renters coming in and we got to produce those numbers, or we have excess amount for the mortgage. It's, are you in an environment? I mean, even in the Carolinas, you think about that. They're so up north, but they're still south that literally they still get hit with storms and the messes of real estate. So people say, "Oh, I'm gonna put all my eggs in one basket." No, it doesn't work that way. Are people diversified in their portfolio? So public people are okay with taking on debt. That's why it's called the public. The public deals with debt. The private, it deals with equity. A lot of people hear about equity. They hear about equity in their house. They hear about equity in companies, but they're not sure how it is. We even get trustees coming to us. "Oh yeah, I'm trying to get a private equity investment." Now you think about this. They're really not trying to get a private equity investment. You want to know why? Because we'll sit there, we'll keep questioning the trustee. The trustee will say, "I'm not trying to give up a percentage of my company though. I'm not trying to give up an equity stake in my company. I'm not looking to give up a fraction of my company." And then we go to the public, and now that's where you're really supposed to just go get a loan. In the public, you ask for a loan. Some people we've so recently sat in front of some entrepreneurs. Once again, we're not promoting or being biased or unbiased towards it. As some entrepreneurs brought up, oh, SBA. We brought up SBA. SBA not something we promote because they take a little bit longer than what you might expect. This is an organization. They're not moving for no money overnight. You go to a private lender, they can move overnight. That's the difference. The regulations aren't there in the private. So when you ask questions, "Oh man, Trust Christian involved, what's the difference between going to a private lending institution and a public lending institution?" A public lending institution is going to take a little bit longer. You all know they're all going to ask you for your co-signing because people in the public, that's what they do. In the private, you don't depend on that. Remember, private people, we don't sign with our names. Yeah, I want to be private. I say I want to be private. Oh, hold on, you want to be private? Then when you say you don't sign with your name, we're saying it from the perspective when those public people are trying to say, "Oh, my name is good as gold. I could wipe out a debt with my name because my name is the credit." What did we just say happens in the private? The signature don't mean that much now. What really we want to see in the private is tangible assets. It's tangible equity. It's value. What value do you have? What value does the company have? What value does the asset have? Tangible value, intangible value. We can calculate both. We have appraisers for both. Some things are calculated on an intangible basis. It's intrinsic and numismatic. These are financial terms. People say, "Oh, I need financial literacy." You research numismatic. You research intrinsic. Because that's what we're dealing with in the private. The nominal value of things. The actual value of things. People think because they were born, they're worth something. No. You earn that. You provide value to the world, and then it gives you back dollar bills. That's the code. It ain't rocket science. Why is it so hard to build a business? Because you've been told everything you don't need to hear. The code is you create value and you sell it. How do you create money for the private family estate? Is this a mystery, Trust Christian Revolt? Or should I keep selling my time to a job? Maybe I'll stop selling my time to a job and I'm going to sell a creative asset. I'm going to acquire assets. I'm going to sell assets to grow the family estate. Different thought process. The public people, they're going to depend on somebody giving them the paycheck, boss. It's easier. We all know entrepreneurship's the rocky road. Oh man, shiver me timbers. I'm not going to be the best trustee if I'm an employee. Probably not. Why? Because because those individuals have limitations on their thinking. It's not because they don't. Okay, like we even had a trustee come on the line the other day, and their trusteeship very sophisticated to a degree, and literally trustee is in sales and they're having emotional situations and we're here to clean them up. What happens when in the private sector, we understand it's not about money, it's about your mindset. That's all it's about. And the sooner or later we clean up poverty, stinking thinking, the sooner or later we get rid of thoughts that, if anything, we just have to evolve our thoughts. We have to evolve our thoughts to the money level that we want to acquire. Simple as that. That's the process that we're going through, is evolving our thoughts to bring in the physical equivalent of it. So in the private sector, we actually like physical things. See, in the public, they want to deal with the intangible. They want to deal with the debt that's on paper. Oh man, we got a debt today, we could wipe it out tomorrow. That's what people want to hear. People want their student loans paid off. They want the public debt paid off. If people could hear that the trillions of dollars was disappeared, what benefit is that going to do for you? Private people, that's how we think about it. We already know. We have private net worth. That's not our debt. That's the public's debt. That can be restructured overnight. Just like you're so scared of the dollar going down in the tubes, then the public debt can be restructured overnight. Private people do not care because we hold tangible assets. We actually do, quote unquote, own property, but we're doing it from trust Christian, own nothing, control everything perspective. That's how we're doing it. We don't need to own anything. It's not a mystery. What do you need to own? You don't own anything. But hey, as long as you want to keep lying to yourself, it's like the fake news. You gotta keep watching the fake news because it's fake. So you just want to keep seeing the fake stuff. But when you come into the private, all we want to do is know the numbers about the company, baby. All we want to know is your network. All we want to know is what's your assets under management. That's what people want to know, right? You're judging us off the assets under management, or you judging us based off of the house that we got that's in our name and it's a debt, a public debt. Public people versus private people. Private people, we understand the importance of privacy. We know that privacy is real. Public people don't think privacy is real, or they haven't been educated on it yet. There's a few reasons. Once again, there are many that say once they even come into the knowledge, they're not going to think that they can be fully private, and they're not going to ever try because they're good. They've been so programmed to be in the public. You think about it. You went to public school. Why would you be? Why would you have a private thought process? Where in your family lineage has anyone ever did anything private? So we have to say, okay, we're going to move forward in that capacity now. How do we move forward in that capacity? Private people understand the power of contracts. Public people don't. They think they can shimmy sham through things. They think that they can abscond from debts. They think that's literally what's going on in the public, ladies and gentlemen. Like, that's what's going on. There's nothing else to talk about the public. Ladies and gentlemen, the public is built on debt. If you want to be rich, you go into the public. If you want to be wealthy, you can come into the private, but still you can go into the public and get wealthy too. If you just want to have goo gobs of money, you go into the public and you build a company that can take on large debt. You think about any major company out here in the public, they literally are borrowing debt cheaper than what you're buying your house at. You can Google that. These companies are borrowing debt at cheaper rates than you buying a house. When we talk to trustees about having their properties in the proper position as far as the business, then LLC, C Corp, whatever, trusteeship, whatever it is, there's tangible value to that position. They can sell that entity that sold the property because now it has credit. Now it has transaction volume through it. Private people are thinking business first, not personal. Private people are thinking about how can we make this an investment so we can write this off. Public people, they're thinking about, man, I'm spending all this money, trust Christian in the vault. I'm spending money on accounting. I'm spending money on the trust. I'm spending money on the lawyers. I'm spending money on going to these different events. I'm spending money. Right. But when we're in business, it's business. It's an investment. And an investment is actually a write-off. Are you writing off your private education? How many trustees use their corporations since they operate in the public? Are they going to write off their private education? Isn't it a write off? Have people read the publication that says you can write off an education as an executive? Oh, I didn't know that. My accountant didn't tell me that. Exactly. The accountant didn't say it. So we're not limiting our knowledge to the accountant. We hire them. That means, it's interesting. Whether you like him or not, we were listening to actually the youngest Trump, and he said his dad used to make him go to the job sites and actually work with the people on the construction site. And we talked to last name Patel. Shout out to that family last name. Talked to one of the Patels. Literally says, "Oh yeah, we own a bunch of hotels, and yeah, my dad, he made me go in and mop the floors as a janitor. I had to like clean the bedrooms and things like that when I was younger. He didn't just give me the golden keys to the estate. But I don't want my kid to have it as hard as me. That's what people say, and then they wonder why your kid don't come up the right way. It ain't hard now. You if you put them on the site, you might have a chance. And it doesn't mean that they have to do it forever. It's just giving them a. It's like when people say, "Oh, I'm gonna let my kid play every sport to figure it out. I'm gonna tell them every instrument so they can figure it out." Well, okay. Well, did you give them the options on how to make money in life and figure it out, or are they limited to job application mentality? I gotta find the man to work for the man, instead of our last name being the most important last name. And that's challenging because a lot of people come from broken families, broken homes. We're going to say it in public. It is what it is. And people come from broken homes. They don't really have a lot of pride in their last name. But ladies and gentlemen, we'll share with you some of the stories. Once again, we sit around some of these families. We sit around families. It'd be so funny, right? So you'll sit around a family and like literally they will just say their last name. They won't even address each other in their first name. So you'll sit around families and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's what, that's what the Rockefellers do. Like that's literally how they speak. They speak of their last name. That's not what a Barsdale does. That's not what a Jackson does. That's literally how they speak. When we say they, we're talking about the private people that we're talking about, self included. So you speak of the last name because the private family estate is looking to pass along something through the last name. They're looking to create lineages. And this is not a public thought process. Public thought process, oh man, go to public school, come out, get a job, and get a little bit of retirement, and that's that. Now, if you follow in the biblical text, it say a good man leaves his children an inheritance. So some people, they going to try to leave their kids an inheritance. Some people, they just going to blow it all while they're here. And that's nothing wrong with either or, because that's what it is. So, oh yeah, we're going to say now, we're going to leave something? How are we going to leave it to them? Public people, they leaving assets naked. We got people coming to us. Oh, Trust Christian, I got it covered. Public people, this is how public people talk. I got it covered, Trust Christian. I'm going to give it to my kids. That's how you know they're doing it wrong. That alone, we end the conversation. And we go over to what the private people do. Private people say, oh yeah, well, once again, we sat at the table. We always appreciate a private person's perspective because what you're about to hear is not one perspective. It's one of many, but there's many others. Here's one perspective from a private person. Sitting in a room with private people. Gentleman had over $50 million in assets. Bottom line. He said, sitting there asking him, this gentleman's like 60 years old. He's like, oh, okay. Actually, maybe even older. Asked the just, so, hey, so you gonna give your kid the business? Let him at least get some money for any asset? Like, well, I'm probably gonna give him some money, but I'm not gonna let him manage it. And I'm like, why not? And he's like, well, because he's not built for it. Those were his exact words. He's not built for it. And when you're sitting there and you hear somebody say that their child is not built for what they've already established, it should be like a cakewalk, you would think, right? That's what you would think, right? No, not a cakewalk. He actually is so wise, he's not going to let his kid fail or hurt himself or anyone else. Sure, he can grow into that position. Sure, he can educate himself into that position. He can toughen himself up. He can do whatever he's got to do, get built for it. But he's over 35. He's probably brought up with a silver spoon in his mouth. What are you talking about? You think he's really going to pull himself up and get busy at over 35 years old, 40 years old? Oh, Trust Christian, I'm doing that because I'm doing that for my family estate. You're first gen. He's not first gen. The child is not first gen. He was born with a silver spoon, quote unquote. Maybe he was there during the working phase. Either way, he's pretty much just being a trust fund baby. But you hear in the private sector, there's wisdom and discernment. I'm not going to give my child a loaded gun. I'm not going to give my child something I know that they're going to turn into financial ruin. So there's qualifications. We sit in the rooms. The wives sit in the rooms. We see the children sit in the rooms. Children are in the rooms. We don't want to say infant status, but anywhere. Infant, 3 years old. Not too many like toddlers type stuff, but anywhere from 12 years old, you could see somebody shadowing their father, mother. You could see someone shadowing their parents for sure. They're around. Bottom line. Bottom line. And usually the best managers, they end up having their children around. This is a hard pill to swallow because this is the easiest way to perpetuate generational wealth. Oh man, trust Christian, man. Don't tell me it's that hard, man. I don't want to torture my kids and make them, come around. I'm going to let them be a kid. Okay. We just mentioned how the elite are doing it, how the private people are doing it. It's not an accident. We talk about private people intermarrying. This is what happens in the private sector. Oh, Trust Christian, are you serious? That's what's going on? Yes, private people are not trying to mix their bloodline with people that have poverty consciousness. They believe it's in your DNA. Do y'all hear the perspectives that we sit around? They think it's in your DNA that you're poor. They don't think you can get out of poverty, out of the public, because of your DNA. When in all actuality, it's just your programming. You went through public education, you got a public education, so you're going to do public stuff until you learn enough private information to do private stuff. It's that simple. How you going to do private stuff if you don't have a private education? That's why it's so important to keep investing. But people don't want to know how much the private education costs because it costs some shekels. It costs some ruples. It costs some dimes and nickels. People would rather put their money in other people instead of into their family estate, which is private family investing. It's okay. The private sector's not begging anybody to come. I can promise you that. They ain't begging nobody to come to the private sector. For what? For you to be competition finally, to actually might have a stake in something in life, might have a stake in some land. We know trustees, they got stakes in land and don't know how to monetize the land. You hear that? They got assets, but they don't know how to manage them. Sure, we got trustees that know how to manage them. We're talking to the majority that don't, the public that doesn't. The trustees that are successful, these people have over $1 million in assets. They got over $10 million in assets. They got over $5 million businesses. We have trustees that have over a $5 million business, period. In revenue every year. They're doing national, international business. But they understood the importance of privacy. They trust Christian, know nothing, control everything. Shout out to Texas. We can shout out Texas. Texas has always been great to us. Texas is a great place. There's a lot of money in Texas and trustees. Public people. Public people don't understand the importance of a team. They think it's a do-it-yourself project. Private people, we understand that we need a team. We've been educated that each accomplishes more when we have a team. When we have a concentrated group of people pushing and going in the same direction. This is leadership. Private people have specific educations. They're some of the best leaders. They're some of the best communicators. If we started naming leader after leader in the private sector, you all will say, wow, definitely either or. Great communicator or great leader. One or the other. Or both. We could just pull up name after name after name and go over. Was he a great, and you all could vote. Great leader or great communicator. If we did even, we just think of one name we just thought off the top of our head, Martin Luther King. He may not be private, but once again, great leader, great communicator. Martin Luther King has his name on a lot of streets in the United States, ladies and gentlemen. Do y'all think his family doesn't have a hand in that? You think his family estate doesn't have a hand in that? That his name is been put in, memorialized, has been given an endowment, has been given a mandate to be on cities' names in the Americas. That's how it works, ladies and gentlemen, when you're in the know. public people, eh, you know, Christian, why do I need to care about that trust, Christian? I'm not making that money yet. I didn't get there yet. Oh, okay. But the ones that understand, they have a sponsor a highway for a reason. So we can keep going on and on. We love the comparison. Do y'all like the comparison? Feel free to type into the chat. Do y'all appreciate the comparison? Feel free to type in where you're listening live, listen to replay from. Always feel free to type into the chat where you're listening live, listen to replay from. But we definitely wanted to do a quality comparison for the subject matter of public people and private people because we can talk about this all day for hours, ladies and gentlemen. This is something where there's so much to contrast that it really shows an individual or families, wow, we have to operate as a business as opposed to just operating where somebody else gives us the time to show up on the clock and that's when we punch in. No, when you in the private sector, it's guts and glory and you're going for your dreams. That's the bottom line. We can see why people don't come to the private sector because it's all guts, no glory. It's no glory in the private sector. Like if you're wealthy in the private sector, no one knows your name. Like that's the value of being private. See, in the private sector, we have values. We care about those values. We care about privacy. So we don't care if we're known or not. We just care about money and we care about assets and people that are great teams, great people, that's what we care about in the private sector. So when people ask, oh, well, what are you looking for in the private sector? Private sector, once again, we're already looking for a team. So we're looking for great people and we're looking for great ideas. Whether y'all know it or not, we talk about this all the time with trustees. There are so many foundations out there giving out money. There are so many other families that are giving out money, but are you in the right vehicle to receive the money? I want to go as a religious vehicle, trust Christian in the vault. Yeah, but ain't no college giving money to no religious institution. Did you hear that? The Harvard endowment, the Duke endowment, these various different endowments, they make investments. They're not investing. We're not saying they're not. We're going to put our hands up. They're traditionally, there's no, that's like, they're going to give money to a church. That's what you're saying now? With no return on capital? Some of the best asset managers in the world, you're going to tell them to give away the money to the church. The church not going to get the money back. And if they do, that's great. But you know how it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's being in the right vehicle, at the right place, at the right time, with the right people. Public or private. You make a choice. This might be not the easiest choice for most people. Because they think, some people may say, well, can I operate in the private and operate in the public at the same time? Of course. A lot of people, when you say at the same time, you're going to put one hat on or the other, but you're never going to wear them at the same time. But you do have both hats if you decide to ever make that decision, of course, because as private people, there's times where we go into public and we have to acquire assets. That's the bottom line. So there's a lot of assets that are in the public that are floating around, and you'd be surprised that there's a lot of assets floating around. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a asset dislocation right now. In the economy, and so when they talk about the baby boomers retiring and they talk about a wealth transfer going on, that's what they're talking about. And it's literally like it's trillions of dollars just in the air in people's businesses, assets in real estate, various different assets. Older people are getting older. They're selling off assets. They're downsizing. Once again, public people. So there's so many assets that are going up for grabs, and if you're going to take any wealth back into the private, you got to go into the public traditionally to go get it, especially for the amount that you're looking for. There's so much more money because of the debt in the public, whereas in the private, it's hard tangible. Traditionally, you see a different type of capital allocation for sure. Even if we were to say, because if we say public and private people are going to be the family estate, whereas in the public you're talking about the entities, the business entities and things of that nature. So that's how we would talk about it at the vault. So even when we say uh, private people, some people may say, oh, well, there are private businesses. That's true. At the same time, those entities are still looking for a return on capital, even in the private sector. Sure, can they be greater? Sure. At the same time, people go into the public because they have a public stock market for a reason. There's a public stock market because people want to allocate money to companies, debt to companies in the public, not just the private. And so when we see that, we really just want to educate ourselves on how to get the money in the public now. And there are a lot of assets up for grabs, and it's just figuring out what assets you guys are going to grab. What assets are you going to produce actually? These are the things that an individual at this point in 2024 would be thinking about is what am I going to put forth to serve the public? Because think about it, if your customers in the public, you're going to serve the public. So you just want to be aware of the industry, the regulations, and things of that nature. But once again, if you're private, you may create something in the private, patent it, and do all when you literally patent it, but copyright all those good things in the private, quote unquote, too as well, and then go in the public and do it from the private in the public as well. But at the same time, you may go in the public and sell the actual end product from the public entity to the public people, and that's just how business is done traditionally. And you may raise debt from the public entity as well, not from the private entity, even though the private may own the public. So there's various ways about going about doing it. If you want to get a consultation, feel free to reach out, Christian@trustchristian.com. Once again, that's Christian@trustchristian.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Peace and joy.